In my guide to essential SNES games, I said that the transition from 8 to 16-bit was one of the 3 most important shifts in console history. Well, today it's time to talk about the second major leap, the arrival of the PlayStation 1 and the Nintendo 64. This wasn't just a technical upgrade, it was a creative turning point. Games started to move beyond arcade-style challenges and became more cinematic, immersive, and story-driven experiences. And since our focus here is the PS1, let's get straight to it. This isn't a list of the best games in terms of critical consensus or technical achievement. It's a personal and opinionated guide to the essential experiences on the console. Titles that, for one reason or another, are absolutely necessary for anyone looking to understand the impact of the PS1 and why it's still remembered so fondly. 18. Front Mission 3. Among the many outstanding tactical RPGs the PS1 gave us, like Final Fantasy Tactics, Tactics Ogre, and Vandal Hearts, Front Mission 3 is the one that stuck with me the most. The mecha theme already sets it apart with its deep tactical layer and striking visuals, but what really makes it unique is the combat system based on mech parts. Lose an arm, say goodbye to your weapon, lose the torso, that's the end of your pilot. This added layer of strategy, combined with a well-built narrative and campaign-changing decisions, makes every battle a blend of calculation, improvisation, and tension. Essential for anyone looking beyond the swords and sorcery of traditional RPGs. 17th, Mega Man X4. To me, this is the best Mega Man game ever, even better than the NES and SNES classics. Mega Man X4 takes the series formula to a whole new level, with beautifully animated 2D graphics, razor-sharp gameplay, and, most importantly, the debut of Zero as a fully playable character with his own campaign. The story is surprisingly engaging for an action platformer, the stages are diverse and well-designed, and the soundtrack is pure Capcom gold from that era. The challenge is finely tuned to reward skill and persistence, a milestone in the legacy of the Blue Bomber. 16. Vigilante 8 and Twisted Metal 2. Let's not even pretend to choose. These are 2 vehicular combat legends that deserve equal billing. Vigilante 8 stood out with its multiple character campaigns, each with its own unique ending and charismatic cast. It made you want to see every storyline, unlock everything, and master each vehicle's abilities. Twisted Metal 2, on the other hand, was pure chaos. A bloodbath in game form with insane arenas, iconic characters, and an explosive soundtrack. One leaned into finesse, the other into total mayhem. Together, they represent the best of a genre that defined an era, and somehow never really made it past the PlayStation 1. 15th, Driver. Driver is often remembered as GTA before GTA, but that's selling it short. This game is much more about being a professional getaway driver than a generic criminal in an open world. Its infamous opening sequence, where you're thrown into a parking garage and forced to perform a list of maneuvers without a single hint, remains one of the most brutal and iconic tests in PS1 history. Those who pushed through were rewarded with an exceptional experience. Despite its technical limitations, Driver delivered raw, tense, high-speed chases straight out of 70s cop movies. It was challenge, style, and adrenaline packed into a time when all of that had to be done with a fraction of today's resources. It may be the title on this list that aged the worst, but it still deserves a revisit and a few hours of pure fun. 14th, Dino Crisis 2. Dino Crisis rode the wave of Resident Evil and brought dinosaurs into the survival horror spotlight. That's especially clear in the first game, with its claustrophobic setting, well-structured story, smart puzzles, and constant tension. Both games are worth playing, but for different reasons. The first feels like survival horror in a prehistoric nightmare. The second ditches the slow burn and dives headfirst into action and fun, delivering a breakneck pace. The in-game shop, where you buy weapons and upgrades with kill points, changed the genre's dynamics entirely. Fast-paced scene changes, enemy variety, combo mechanics, and immediate reward made Dino Crisis 2 addictive. The first is more coherent, but the second is by far the most fun. Both are essential. 13. Xenogears and Other RPGs. Xenogears isn't just a game, it's a saga. It's one of those RPGs that dares to dive deep into themes like religion, identity, and philosophy. The story is dense, full of twists, and morally complex characters. Even though the second disc famously suffers from budget and time constraints, it still delivers one of the boldest experiences on the console. And speaking of RPGs, the PS1 was overflowing with legendary titles. Parasite Eve mixed horror and RPG like no other. Vagrant Story brought tactical innovation. Suikoden 2 delivered one of the genre's best narratives. Chrono Cross expanded Chrono Trigger's legacy with style. Valkyrie Profile was a Norse mythology masterclass, and The Legend of Dragoon and Breath of Fire rounded out the lineup with tons of personality. Every one of them is worth your time. Actually, scratch that. They absolutely must be played. 12th, Medieval. Medieval is one of those games that feels odd at first glance. A medieval knight who died and came back as a skeleton in armor, fighting creatures in a world that's half gothic, half cartoonish. But just a few minutes of gameplay are enough to realize how fun, charming, and well-crafted it really is. Sir Daniel Fortesque, even without a voice, has a unique personality that carries the game with humor and charm. The gameplay is simple but solid, and the variety of weapons and levels keeps things fresh throughout. The world is creative and memorable. It's easy to play, easy to love, and impossible to forget. A criminally underrated PS1 classic. 11th, Tomb Raider. Here's another recommendation where every PS1 entry in the series is worth playing, but the first game has a special magic. Sure, Lara's Mansion got better with each sequel, but the original was more restrained, more mysterious, and because of that, more captivating. The way secrets are hidden in the levels, the clever puzzles, the mix of historical and supernatural elements, and the constant feeling of isolation give it a truly unique atmosphere. The graphics were basic even then, but the ambition in design and mood made up for it. Lara Croft didn't become an icon by accident, and yes, the tank controls can be rough today, but the game still holds up. Honestly, pick any of the first three. They're all worth it. 10th, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. Every Tony Hawk game in PS1 deserves a revisit, but the second one is easily the most iconic. The original formula was polished to perfection, with bigger levels, more complex tricks, a flawless soundtrack, and a sense of freedom that few games of the time could match. Unlockable characters added another layer to a game that was already fantastic. The introduction of Create a Skater and Create a Park modes opened the door for endless fun and customization. It was all about skill and style, with a rewarding learning curve and a totally addictive rhythm. But above all, what defined the series was its soundtrack, absolutely iconic. In fact, if you played it back then, the opening song is probably already playing in your head. 9th, Spyro the Dragon. Spyro is the kind of game that proves charm, personality, and tight gameplay can be more memorable than any amount of hyper-realistic graphics. The little purple dragon won over a generation with colorful, expansive worlds full of secrets. Smooth controls, a catchy soundtrack, and a great sense of progression turn this into one of the most enjoyable experiences on the PS1. It's easy to pick up, hard to put down, and offers that rare feeling of lightness and freedom that few games manage to deliver with such consistency. A true classic that absolutely deserves to be revisited. 8. Crash Bandicoot 3: Warped. If the SNES had its fair share of iconic platforming games, Crash Bandicoot was the undisputed champion on the PS1. Every entry is worth playing, even the first one, despite its awkward difficulty, but the third game is by far the most complete. Warped takes level design to another level, introducing new mechanics, diverse stages with unique themes, special abilities, and extra challenges that add tons of replay value. And it does all of this without losing the simplicity and sharp pacing that defined the series. If you want to understand why Crash became synonymous with platformers on the PS1, start right here. 7th, Gran Turismo 2. Gran Turismo 2 remains one of the greatest racing game achievements to this day. The absurd number of cars, tracks, and customization options would be impressive on its own, but the game goes even further. From license tests to grueling endurance races, every detail reinforces its dedication to realism. The thrill of building a dream garage, tuning your cars, and taking them out for a spin was both immersive and endlessly fun. It demands patience and dedication, but pays off with a depth few games of its time could match. Even with today's sleek racing sims, GT2 holds up as a solid and deeply satisfying experience for any motorsport fan. 6th, Tekken 3. If Tekken helped bring 3D fighting games into the spotlight, Tekken 3 took things further and raised the bar for the entire genre on consoles. With stunning graphics for its time, fluid animations, and a combat system that balanced accessibility with depth, it cemented itself as a landmark title. The massive character roster, many of them unlockable, and extra modes like Tekken Force and Tekken Ball added layers of content that kept players engaged for dozens of hours. Each fighter had a unique style, encouraging experimentation and mastery. This was the kind of game that defined rivalries and fueled countless all-nighters in home arcades. Seriously, everyone should experience unlocking everything in this game at least once. It's pure satisfaction. If you're looking for another solid 3D fighter, Soul Blade is the go-to, with its unique challenge mode. 5th, Silent Hill. Silent Hill isn't just a horror game, it's a masterclass in atmosphere. With its thick fog, distorted sounds, and haunting soundtrack, it creates a constant sense of unease that few games have ever matched. It doesn't rely on cheap jump scares. Instead, it leans into psychological horror, uncomfortable silences, and that creeping sense that something's terribly wrong. The cryptic story, multiple endings, and oppressive setting deliver a powerful experience that stays with you. Silent Hill proved that fear doesn't need to scream to be effective. Sometimes all it takes is a whisper you didn't want to hear. 4th, Resident Evil. Resident Evil didn't just redefine survival horror, it practically invented it. The PS1 entries, especially the first two, blended tension, puzzles, iconic moments, and memorable enemies into an experience where tight corridors and limited resources became a source of constant stress and thrill. The controls may not appeal to modern players, but for those who enjoy a real challenge, any of the trilogy is worth the time. Personally, I think the clunky movement and fixed camera add to the tension and feeling of vulnerability. Its story is unforgettable, even when it dives into the absurd. But beyond the gameplay, its influence exploded into pop culture, pushing zombies to the top of the monster hierarchy in entertainment, surpassing even vampires and werewolves in the public imagination. 3rd, Castlevania, Symphony of the Night. Speaking of vampires, here we have the greatest representative of the genre in gaming history. With flawless gothic atmosphere, a memorable soundtrack, and revolutionary level design, Symphony of the Night practically gave birth to the Metroidvania subgenre. Its fluid controls, open-ended exploration, and charismatic characters, especially Alucard, cemented it as a timeless reference point. Every room in the castle hides something, whether it's an item, an enemy, or a secret. If the PS1 opened the door to the future of gaming, Symphony proved there was still power and beauty in tradition, showing the world that 2D still had plenty to offer in the age of 3D. 2nd, Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid went far beyond a typical stealth action game. Blending espionage with high-concept gameplay, it introduced mechanics and narrative ideas that were simply revolutionary. This was a true turning point for storytelling in games. With precise controls, a layered plot, complex characters, and unforgettable moments, like the Psycho Mantis fight, it demanded more than fast reflexes. It asked for creativity and emotional engagement. And yes, the game reading your memory card freaked out an entire generation. Every stage felt like a puzzle, every encounter left a mark. Kojima redefined what we expected from game narratives and created something that still echoes today. Metal Gear Solid isn't just a game, it's a cultural landmark. 1st, Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII is the game that made the world take Japanese RPGs seriously on a global scale. With an emotionally gripping story, unforgettable characters, and a strategic yet fluid combat system, it's a narrative and emotional epic. Nobuo Uematsu's soundtrack is a masterpiece on its own, and Cloud's Journey carved a permanent place in gaming history. It's one of those games that still moves people and inspires developers decades later. That said, 7 isn't the only gem among the PS1 Final Fantasies. Honestly, every single one is worth your time. Bonus, Digimon World. This is one of the most controversial games on the PS1, but I'll defend it with everything I've got. Digimon World isn't just a game, it's a full-blown experience that pulls you in completely. Anyone willing to understand even the basics of its mechanics will uncover an absurdly immersive and rewarding universe. The gameplay is unique and revolutionary, managing to be both simple and deeply complex at the same time. It's fun whether you just scratch the surface or master every layer, and trust me, I've lived through both phases. You genuinely feel like you're being pulled into the digital world alongside the protagonist. Beyond the main campaign, there's a massive amount of extra content, secrets, and a level of freedom in progression that I've yet to see matched by any other game. For those who get past the steep learning curve, it's simply unforgettable. Now I want to hear from you. What did you think of the list? Do you agree with the picks, or did I leave out a must-have title? Drop a comment below with the PS1 games that defined your experience with the console, the ones you consider essential, and feel free to create your own list. I'd love to see what each of you would include. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. There's plenty more nostalgia and deep dives on the way. See you in the next one.